Every now and then, just for the fun of it, we decide to go off to some obscure place that you've never heard of and are not likely to visit. Tonight, we're taking you to Eigg, or the People's Republic of Eigg, as it's jokingly referred to, in Scotland, a country where half the privately held land is owned by fewer than 500 people. A lot of it is tied up in huge estates owned by lairds, who often run them as fiefdoms. 20 years ago, after 2 centuries of servility, the people of Eigg drove away their laird and seized control of their own destiny, establishing the first community-owned estate in Scotland's history. We wanted to see what they've made of it. Just 3 miles wide, 6 miles long, and 10 miles off the Scottish coast, Eigg is part of the Inner Hebrides, surrounded by the Isles of Rum, Muck, and Skye at the edge of the North Atlantic. It's an ungroomed masterpiece of nature, too wild to tame, a craggy isle of incredible beauty populated mostly by sheep and the dogs that keep track of them. The people do their best to stay clear while taking everything in.
So what's your average day like?
Some people would say very lazy. I like to think I just make the hard work look easy. All depends on your outlook.
Charlie Galley is the taxi driver on Eigg and the only source of public transportation up and down the island's furrowed main artery. It's a niche he claimed for himself when he arrived from the mainland with his wife and this aging Volvo 4 years ago. Plenty of time to get the feel of the place.
You know everybody on the island?
I know them and their shoe sizes, and like I say, there's no secrets on an island, so...
So what are they talking about this week?
Mainly you.
It's not like they don't get visitors. 12,000 tourists came here last year, most of them to spend only a few hours. There are very few places to stay. We were going to be here for days, asking questions about Egg's quirky history. And everyone directed us to Maggie Fife, the island secretary, who landed here 41 years ago after touring Afghanistan in a camper.
I never imagined that I would spend the rest of my life here.
Does that mean you like it?
I think so, yeah.
It was 1976, just after the entire island had been purchased by a wealthy English toff named Keith Schellenberg, who became the 7th Laird of Eigg.
Welcome to Eigg.
Under Scotland's feudal landlord system, he had absolute power over virtually every aspect of his estate.
What kind of impact did he have on people's lives?
He had that control over everything, and people, jobs, houses, and he wouldn't give anybody a lease on anything.
By all accounts, Schellenberg used the island as his personal playground, lavishly entertaining guests and driving about in a 1927 Rolls-Royce, while most of his tenants lived in poverty without electricity.
Was there a rebellion?
Eventually, yeah.
It started with a slow burn that burst into flames one night in 1994, when Schellenberg's beloved Rolls-Royce met a fiery end, burnt to a crisp like a slice of bacon under circumstances still unexplained.
A mysterious fire, spontaneous combustion, who knows?
So did you ever figure out what happened to the Rolls-Royce?
No.
Headline writers all over Britain couldn't believe their luck. There was scrambled egg, burnt rolls, and egg comes to the boil. It went on for a year until Schellenberg gave up, expressing his disdain for the islanders in this BBC interview.
I think that my ultimate failure with Eigg is that I can't be bothered to try and get on with them anymore.
His final act was to sell the island to a wacky German who called himself Maruma and claimed to be an artist of note and a professor. He turned out to be neither. Up to his beret in debt, Maruma stopped paying people's wages, and within 2 years, creditors put Eigg up for auction. Maggie Fife and others thought, why not buy the island for ourselves?
By the time we got to Maruma, and 2 years of somebody that was living in Stuttgart and had only visited for 4 days, it had convinced everybody that we wouldn't have to do very much to do better than what he'd done, which was nothing.
No one in Scotland had ever tried a community buyout before, certainly not 64 residents on a depressed, undeveloped island with no cash or credit. But lots of people were familiar with their story and fancied the idea of wee folk taking on the big guys. In 1997, a public fundraising campaign brought in $2.5 million to close the deal. The funds came from 10,000 individual contributors and one huge check from an unknown woman.
The bulk of the money came from a mystery benefactor.
A mystery benefactor? Sounds like Dickens.
It's a pretty crazy story, really.
You don't know who she is?
The only string attached was that she remained anonymous.
She ever been to the island?
Not as far as I know.
Do you know why she did it?
I think she's given money to a lot of what she regards as good causes, and we were lucky enough to be one of them.
That was 20 years ago. The Eggers and their friends marked the 2 decades of self-rule with a big blowout they call a ceilidh, with traditional music, dancing, and drink. We decided to cancel the next day's shoot to allow time for recovery, but 24 hours wasn't enough.
What time did you leave the ceilidh?
It's about 8 a.m. I think when we finally left, yeah.
How long did it take you to recover?
Probably tomorrow.
Johnny Jobson first experienced Eigg in his 20s, working on a fishing boat as a scallop diver. Since then, a lot has changed. One, there is electricity now, which allowed him to move his wife and family here last year and edit a sports journal online from their tiny cottage. It's required some sacrifices, but they love the beauty of the place and its eccentricities.
You'll look at the scenery or you'll see a pod of dolphins come through and you just remind yourself how lucky you are.
You seem to have a lot of characters on this island.
Yeah.
Were they normal when they came here?
Yeah, not all of us.
Dean Wiggin turned up in a kayak 14 years ago, and he's still here. He's very good at fixing things. Jobs are extremely scarce, so you have to bring one with you or use your wits to invent one.
It's one of those places that really gets into your soul. I think it's quite enchanting.
Sarah Bowden runs her uncle's sheep farm on Eigg. She grew up here, then left to work as a music journalist in London, where she met her future partner, Johnny Lynch, one of Scotland's most popular musicians. She coaxed him to Eigg.
Did you think he was going to come?
Not really. No, because I was living in a caravan at the time, and it was all quite rustic.
Yeah, you did look a bit shocked.
And Johnny's, proper suburban city.
What?
Well, you're not an actual country boy, are you?
If you mean I look after my nails, then yes, I do. But I knew from as soon as I got here, I couldn't really see a reason for me to go back. And just look at me now.
Look at you now.
See if you can spell it.
When it comes to the essentials on Eigg, there is basically one of everything. One primary school for 5 students, one grocery shop where 100 islanders all choose from the same food, and one pub at the tea room down by the wharf, where the best beer is local. Stu McCarthy and Gabe McVarish, who are both married to women who grew up on Eigg, got so tired of drinking the mass-produced stuff from the mainland, they started their own mini microbrewery 2 years ago.
So this is it. Is this legal?
It's legal. It's legal.
They make 8 different brews, including I Am the Eggman, which is very popular with the tourists. They're just beginning to turn a profit, but say they've saved a lot of money drinking their own beer.
Are you the biggest selling beer on Eigg?
Thankfully, yes. Yeah, we can say that.
None of these younger people would be here without the island's tiny but unique power grid that runs almost entirely on renewable energy, a combination of wind, hydroelectric, and solar, the first time it's ever been accomplished anywhere.
That is the biggest and most impressive project that we've done.
It changed everything, right?
Oh yeah, it's made life so much easier.
It was designed and funded with multiple grants, mostly from the European Union, and engineers from all over the world have come to study it. Like everything else on Eigg, it is run and maintained by revolving committees of islanders, the only visible sign of any sort of government. There are no offices, no court system, no police.
Is there any crime on the island?
There's no crime or anything.
Never.
Not that I can remember.
Nobody's snatched something or
They
borrowed
tend to,
something? Or...
They borrow it, and you'll get it usually within the week, returned to you kind of thing. You just don't know where it is at that point in time when you're looking for it. But it will turn up again. It can't go anywhere, it's on an island, so yeah.
What happens if somebody gets sick?
Well, you basically have to be sick on a Tuesday. The doctor comes from Skye on a Tuesday, spends the day here. And that's sometimes weather permitting, if it's really rough in the winter time.
Eigg is dependent on boats for everything. When a ferry comes in with fuel and food, people flock to the wharf to help out. It's not a courtesy, it's a necessity on an island where everyone is more or less scraping by. To survive, they have to rely on each other, look after each other, and put up with each other. The island is too small for feuds or lingering resentments.
What's the difference between people who live on the mainland and people who live on Eigg?
Well, the people on Eigg, I'd have to say, are more evolved.
Charlie Galley, the taxi driver and amateur philosopher, says most people here have done the whole life on the mainland thing and rejected it.
They're all doing their hamster wheel thing,
Hamster wheel.
Yeah. You get a mortgage, you get a car, you get a job, or you do this, that, and the next thing. And they all get so involved, they forget to look about them and see what's actually going on in life,
You should know Eigg is not always served sunny side up. As the days get shorter, the windy, rainy weather turns to sleet with gusts up to 100 miles an hour. The boats might not get through for a week, so people keep lots of beans and Spam in the storeroom. Even the sheepdogs look forlorn.
If you accidentally open your mouth when a gust of wind's coming, it involuntarily fills your lungs. You're like...
To live here, you have to be resilient, self-sufficient, and patient. And not just with the sheep.
The cows like to go down and lie on the beach, on the sand. And they'll all trail down the road, so you can't argue with a cow, It wants to do what it wants to do, and you've just got to give it plenty of time,
There are no grand ambitions here and no discernible interest in development, despite the sea, the cliffs, and the vistas. The owners don't want hotels or a Donald Trump golf course or hundreds of new residents.
I think we're looking for one or two at a time. I think that's how it works here. Then it works a lot better. And we've got time to get used to new people.
We would have liked to stay longer in this stress-free, non-conflict zone where everyone seems to be more or less on the same page. But we were out of clean laundry, we had a ferry to catch, and hamster wheels to jump back onto. As for the people of Eigg, I don't think they were sad to see us go.
On this Easter Sunday, we thought it would be fitting to take you on a journey to Easter Island. It's one of the most remote inhabited islands in the world, far into the Pacific, 2,200 miles due west from the coast of Chile. Dutch explorers gave it its name after they spotted it on Easter Sunday in 1722. What they found has fascinated and confounded the world ever since. Giant stone statues that tower over the island's landscape. They're called moai, and as we learned our first morning on Easter Island, there's nothing quite like them anywhere else in the world. When dawn breaks on Easter Island, it is the moai that first feel the sun. These 15 moai at a site called Tangariki are perhaps the most famous. Carved out of volcanic rock, they're placed on a stone platform called an ahu. The tallest is nearly 30 feet. They stand, strange, silent sentinels, facing away from the sea, watching over the land and its people. At least 1,000 moai can be found scattered across this island, which is about the size of Washington, D.C. Many more moai remain buried underground. To the descendants of those who built them, these are more than statues made of stone. They are immortal branches of an ancient family tree.
The Moai represent an ancestor, and we believe in ancestor that goes beyond this life, but is helping us, guiding you.
Is a Moai a distinct individual ancestor, or can it also be the family line of that ancestor?
Both.
Pedro Edmonds Pauoa is the longtime mayor of the only town on Easter Island.
So when you see the Moai today, it's not just something from the past, it's something that is alive, that has power right now.
Yes, we indigenous people from this island believe in that.
The indigenous people here believe their ancestors and family lines are represented by specific groups of Moai. Mayor Edmonds Pauoa says his are at a site called Tahai.
My genealogy traces all the way to that site, 85 times.
It goes back that far?
Yes, more than 1,000 years.
That is entirely possible. No one knows for sure the exact date the first people came here, but it's believed to have been somewhere around 800 to 1,200 years ago. Archaeological evidence indicates they sailed from an unknown island in Polynesia, a dangerous journey across more than 1,000 miles of open ocean. Those first settlers brought with them their tradition of carving, but they made much smaller statues. They also brought a belief in a mystical force called mana.
How do you describe mana? What is mana?
Mana is beyond description. If we were to describe it of today's language, is knowledge.
Knowledge.
Could be interpreted as wisdom, as an energy that gives you strength.
Do the Moai still have mana?
Sure. It has soul. It has life.
They're alive.
Absolutely.
According to legend, when important islanders died, their mana flowed out of their bodies into the Moai.
The mana is here. The mana is here.
It's a hard concept for my small mind to imagine.
For human like you guys from the city don't understand these things. Because you worry about working like disciplined animals.
Those who believe in mana say it's not just in the Moai, it can be found in everything here. In the waves that constantly crash ashore, in the rocky soil, and in the green grass that blankets the island.
These objects in the middle of what looks like a barren landscape, they speak to you. They draw you in. They make you want to know more. I think that that's the power of them. And when you see how tall they really are.
Joanne Van Tilburg is a UCLA professor of archaeology. She's been coming here for nearly 40 years, working with local researchers and artists, excavating and cataloging the statues, trying to understand the mysteries and what she calls the magic of the Moai.
They're tight-lipped, these statues.
They don't give up their secrets easily.
They don't give up their secrets easily. And they don't give them up to outsiders easily.
To learn the Moai's secrets, you have to start where nearly all of them were made, around the vent of a dormant volcano. This is the ancient quarry of Ranararaku. There are some 400 Moai here, more than in any other spot on the island. The largest one, never raised upright, is almost 70 feet long and weighs at least 250 tons, as heavy as some passenger jets. Based on excavations Joanne Van Tilburg and other archaeologists have done, an analysis of soil samples and objects found around the statues, Van Tilburg believes the height of Moai construction was around 1300 to the mid-1400s, though Moai did continue to be carved until, or just after, the first contact with Europeans in 1722.
I mean, is it not possible with carbon dating or other scientific techniques to know exactly when something is made?
Unfortunately not. You can't date this stone, in that manner.
When the first archaeological survey was done on the island in 1914, all the Moai, except those in the quarry, were found lying on the ground. There are several plausible theories how they got there. Certain statues may have simply fallen from neglect. Others were knocked over in earthquakes, and some were intentionally toppled during fighting between competing family groups. Today, some Moai are only partially visible. Just their famous faces stick out of the ground. The rest of their bodies are buried under sediment that's naturally built up over the centuries.
This one is at least only about 1/3 above ground.
Wow, so 2/3 of this are actually below ground.
Yes, yes.
At first glance, the Moai all look alike, but Van Tilburg says no two are the same.
How are they different?
Well, they're different in the line of their mouth. They're different in, of course, their size and shape. They're different in their expressions, whether their head is tilted up or lowered slightly or to the side.
These two moai, they're unfinished?
They're unfinished.
Visitors here have long debated how the moai were made, given the Stone Age conditions on the island when the statues were being carved. Van Tilburg says the answer is all around. There are thousands of stone carving tools scattered throughout the quarry.
This was a handheld instrument that was used, and if you hold it, you can actually feel where people may have put their fingers, which was actually used to rough out the sculpture.
You can actually feel the sort of the hand.
Yeah, you can.
Wow, that's amazing.
Isn't that
This
cool?
was literally just laying 10 feet away.
And you put it in your hand, and you can feel where the other person's hand was, who actually used this. When you talk about mystery and magic, that's it right there.
But magic alone couldn't move the moai from the quarry to sites on the coast, in some cases more than 8 miles away. That took muscle and ingenuity. Van Tilburg has tested a theory she believes, that moai were placed horizontally on sleds and dragged over logs. Island legend says the statues walked, and some archaeologists have tested that theory as well, moving them upright, carefully wobbling them back and forth. You may have also heard an out-of-this-world theory about space aliens making and moving the moai. It may sound ridiculous, but it's still believed by many visitors today.
You must have people asking you about extraterrestrials building these.
Yes, I do.
So, I mean, I just have to ask, any possibility of that? You don't believe it, though?
No, I don't believe it.
Easter Island was annexed by Chile in 1888. Half of the 8,000 people who now live here are Chilean immigrants. The other half are modern descendants of those original Polynesian settlers. They call themselves and the island Rapa Nui. In 2017, Chile finally gave them control of the national park where the moai and other important archaeological sites are located. The park covers more than 40% of the island.
The island of Rapa Nui was formed out of volcanic rock starting some 3 million years ago. There are now 3 dormant volcanoes that dominate the landscape. This one is called Ranokau. No one knows exactly how many archaeological sites there are on the island, but this place is like a living museum, constantly battered by the sun, the wind, and the rain.
Those 3 elements are, over time, destroying the moai. These statues may look as though they're solid stone, but they're actually quite porous. Joanne Van Tilburg showed us a small piece of the soft volcanic rock called tuff that the moai are made from.
Tuff has really special qualities where it can be carved and it can be polished quite easily.
It's good for sculpting because it's with a harder stone, it's able to be chipped away easily.
Correct, correct.
So the very material which made these statues possible also long-term makes them very vulnerable.
Exactly.
Rainwater and airborne seeds get into the pores of tuff, gradually breaking it apart. The wind whittles the stone away over time, and further damage is done by birds and a type of algae called lichen. Some moai are in worse condition than others. Take a look at this one called Tukuturi. This photograph is from 1955 when it was unearthed. This is how Tukuturi looks today.
The stone breaks very easily. It is just not stable.
Essentially, I mean, they're dissolving.
Yeah, they are. I mean, if they're standing out in the rain, they're melting like sugar cubes.
Like sugar cubes in the rain.
Exactly. It's that dramatic.
In the 1990s, with help from the Japanese government, the 15 moai at Tongariki, which had fallen or been toppled over, were reconstructed, along with the stone platform they now stand on. The UN has declared Easter Island a World Heritage Site, and efforts to slow the disintegration of the statues with a chemical sealant have been underway for decades, but so far only about 20 moai have been treated. The process is expensive, money the island doesn't have. It's also not a permanent solution. The sealant only delays the inevitable. One day, these moai will likely disappear.
Is there a plan, a conservation plan, an environmental plan for long-term in the future?
No.
There's not?
None. None at all.
Mayor Pedro Edmonds Pauoa is frustrated. There's a lack of consensus among the Rapa Nui about how to preserve the moai. And the island's infrastructure is under pressure from all the tourists who want to come see the statues. A
few decades ago, there were only 2 incoming flights a week. Now there are 2 almost every day.
Thank you.
Cruise ships also make regular calls, just long enough for passengers to get off the boat, grab some souvenirs, and snap a few selfies. In all, 120,000 tourists visited last year.
That's too much.
If tourism continues to grow, is that sustainable here?
No, it's not sustainable.
Christian Moreno Paccarati is a historian who earns his living training tour guides.
Do you have concerns about the impact of tourism?
So, in material terms, the community has never been better. But in general, it's much less friendly than it was some time ago.
He says the more the island caters to tourists, the less like home it is for the people whose ancestors built the Moai.
Today, we are kind of forced to see the statues from far away, just like the tourists that come here. People of my generation, right? We could go there and touch the statues and be part of the statues and hug the statues. How can I explain to my son today that my son cannot do that?
Despite no longer being able to touch them, he still feels the same sense of wonder he's always experienced when visiting the Moai.
You've been here probably thousands of times.
1,000 times, yeah. No, it's still awesome. It's something that you still feel awe when you're here.
Christian Moreno Paccarati supports the efforts to preserve the Moai, but believes it'll take more than mana and money. He has his own somewhat radical idea on how to ensure the Moai keep standing.
The only way to keep them alive is to keep alive the art of making and moving statues.
So you would like to see the people of Rapa Nui making new Moai?
That's right, because these will disappear one day. So if the art of making them is still alive, we will never lose the statues.
A remote jewel of land off the coast of Canada, Fogo Island floats in the northeast corner of the northeast province of Newfoundland and Labrador, the outstretched right fingertip of this continent. The place might be drop-dead gorgeous, but it wasn't immune to the fate befalling so many small and isolated communities in North America. Its one and only industry went into steep decline, and so in turn did its population. Then, about a decade ago, a local returned home, fresh off making a fortune in the tech sector. Her pockets were deep, so was her desire to lift up the place and bring people back. So she unleashed a sort of economic experiment. We took 2 planes, a long drive, and a ferry to reach Fogo Island and check on the early results. The saying here goes, you'll know the Newfoundlanders in heaven. They'll be the ones who want to go home. And the adage comes to life on Fogo Island, a 90-square-mile patchwork of 10 minuscule fishing villages where clapboard houses the color of jelly beans cling to rock 400 million years old. Among its quirks, Newfoundland has its own time zone, half an hour ahead of the mainland. But wander through Fogo Island's villages and you might as well set your watch back to the 18th century. Back then, all you needed to get by here was a pig, a potato patch, and something called a punt. A small wooden fishing boat used in pursuit of North Atlantic cod, the species that once kept this place afloat. Seemingly every structure on the island was built in service of catching and preserving fish, with one gleaming exception, a $40 million luxury inn. Part edge-of-the-earth destination, part economic engine on stilts, the inn is the brainchild of 8th-generation Fogo Islander Zita Cobb. And locals gave her a funny look when she first floated the idea.
What kind of reaction did that get?
Why would anyone come here? We love this place, but it wasn't obvious when, there are fancy places in the world that people go. Our assumption is everybody wants to go where it's warm.
Someone suggested to us it looked like a ship.
The architecture of the inn was obviously a topic of much conversation. I think about it as a metaphor. It's about people from here and people from away. It's about the future and the past.
The past looms large on Fogo Island. To fully appreciate the inn, even as a metaphor, you have to understand Fogo's history.
Just something.
Zita Cobb took us through dozens of tiny islands that dot Fogo's waters to a place called Little Fogo Island. And for those keeping track, that's an island, off an island, off an island.
This is a slip.
Her ancestors landed here from Ireland and South England. They came for one reason.
Fish, fish, and fish.
When you say fish, is it just a given?
It's a given. So when we say fish, we mean cod.
Is it possible to exaggerate the importance of cod to this place?
No, it's not possible, because everything that you need to know about someone from here, you can figure it out by just studying that lowly fish. It's actually quite a noble fish.
A noble fish?
It asks very little and gives so much. They exist on almost anything. I mean, I think a cod could eat a rubber boot if it had to.
Not unlike the noble fish, Zita Cobb's family survived without fuss. In cod, they trusted. Families worked side by side here, trading their fish for goods. No bank accounts, no cash. Cobb's parents could neither read nor write. She and her 6 brothers grew up in a house with no electricity. She says it was a happy childhood, until it wasn't.
What happened?
The worst of the 20th century came down on top of us very quickly in the form of the industrialization of the fisheries. So these enormous factory ships showed up here, all along the coast of Newfoundland, and fished day and night until just about every last fish was gone.
With one small punt launched from this one dock, Cobb's father couldn't compete with commercial vessels that had come to the North Atlantic from all over the world.
How bad did things get for him?
He would go out and come back with nothing. But one day in particular, he came back with one fish. And he brought the fish into the house, and he slapped it down onto the kitchen floor and said, well, it's done. And it was the next day he burned his boat.
He burned his boat?
He burned his boat.
It was almost like a sacrifice.
It was. He did it as a statement. He did it as an expression of pain and anger.
Lambert Cobb made this sacrifice once he realized that those big boats were, in his words, turning fish into money.
He said to me, as a 10-year-old, you have got to figure out how this money thing works, because if you don't, it's going to eat everything we love.
He wasn't wrong. As fish stocks dwindled, so did the island's population, from 5,000 to 2,500. The Cobbs left grudgingly for the mainland in the 1970s. Zita Cobb's father died shortly thereafter, but she heeded his advice. She got a business degree, worked in fiber optics, landed in Silicon Valley, and before long was the 3rd highest paid female executive in America. In her early 40s, she cashed out tens of millions in stock options, dropped out of the winner-take-all economy, and took her business savvy home, determined to revitalize Fogo Island. Instead of writing a check, she posed a question.
What do we have, and what do we know, and how can we put that forward in a way that's dignified for Fogo Islanders and creates economy and connects us to the world?
Spend one night at what the locals call a shed party, and the answer emerges.
When you think about the people of this place, if there's one thing we're really good at, it's hospitality.
What does hospitality mean here?
Hospitality in its purest form is the love of a stranger. We didn't get a lot of strangers, and when they arrived, as my mother used to say, it's always better to see a light coming into the harbor than a light going out.
So in 2013, Cobb built the biggest beacon in the harbor. She made the Fogo Island Inn the centerpiece of a charitable trust called Shorefast, with profits reinvested in the island. At $2,000 a night, the inn does turn a profit, but there were other considerations.
We're going to put a 29-room inn on an island that's never had an inn. What are the consequences of that? Well, more people will come. Well, how many more people? As one woman said, well, you know, we're only 2,500 people. We can only love so many people at a time.
Shorefast and the inn employ more than 300 islanders, but the real payoff is the ripple effect. For starters, all the furniture at the inn is locally made. Same for the pillows and quilts. It so happens the women of Fogo Island have been making them for their own homes for 400 years.
We're getting there. We got half done.
Word is out now. This quilt is destined for a customer in Baltimore. We joined the quilting bee.
Watch him, Millicent.
But didn't last long.
It was all very nice except for this one square.
This is our lettuce room.
Shorefast puts up seed money for new businesses, too. $250,000 so far.
And then you put your plant in?
A $7,500 microloan went to Dwight Budden and his father Hayward, a former fisher who left Fogo Island when the industry collapsed. He's back now as a hydroponic farmer, growing greens for the inn.
Yeah, there's our kale. Yeah. Does Hayward eat kale?
Not too much.
Not too much.
Beyond the kale, new culture is taking root. Futuristic-looking studios now speckle the landscape, part of Shorefast's ambition to bring artists in residence to Fogo. And back at the inn, a chef turns cod into haute cuisine.
If your dad saw cod with magnolia oil and sea
And
foam
porcini.
and porcini,
Yes.
what would he say?
Yes, first thing he said, can you really eat that?
You can do more than eat cod, you can fish for it again. Now that a decades-long ban has been eased, Fogo Island's fishers are back hauling cod. We ventured out of Fogo Harbor with brothers Glenn and Jerry Best,
You know better fish than that.
the fifth generation of their family to harvest these waters.
You go east, your next stop is Ireland.
Ireland.
We're not going there today.
And overhand like that, right?
The Best brothers showed us the traditional Newfoundland way of fishing with a hand line. 150 feet down, no rods, reels, or nets.
Now we're talking.
That's a beauty.
Up comes cod, without much of a fight.
Now that's a nice cod. That's probably a 20-pound fish.
Cod is making a comeback in the North Atlantic. Canada still imposes catch limits, but when the Bests get down to business, they use an automated system to drop thousands of hooks in the water at a time. We watch them offload 20,000 pounds of cod from a single trip. What's more, Shellfish has done the unthinkable and dethroned cod as king. Crab and shrimp now make up 80% of Glenn Best's business, and he's never had a better year.
You told me you caught 400,000 pounds of snow crab. At $7.60 a pound is
Yeah, it's pretty
$3
good.
million
It adds
bucks.
up.
That's
It
pretty
adds
good.
up. Yeah, it was a good year.
But a thriving fishery isn't always enough to keep the kids around. Best's 3 children have moved away from Fogo to pursue other careers.
Your family's been doing this for generations. You named this boat after your dad.
So the sad part about it is that Jerry and myself, we probably could be the last generation that will fish within our family. When the day comes that happens, that will probably be a sad day.
Still, Fogo Island's population has stabilized. There's hope the next census will show an uptick. Babies are the island's biggest celebrities, but as ever, with growth come growing pains. It's already become one of those islands where you have to pray to get a spot on the ferry. Jennifer Sexton spent summers on Fogo Island visiting her grandparents. She recently moved here from Western Canada to open this coffee joint, where locals mix with those who come from away.
Everybody asks about the inn.
What do you tell them?
Well, it's a blessing and a curse.
Her regulars grumble that not long ago, they could get a home for $25,000 Canadian. Now, homes cost 10 times as much.
For somebody from away, that wouldn't be a lot, but for somebody from here, that is a lot of money.
Zita Cobb, the woman who turned this tide, says she doesn't want unchecked growth either.
As the economy grows, we will be smaller as a percentage of the whole economy.
A rare business leader that wants less market share.
We want less market share, exactly.
You said it with a smile on your face, but there's a lot of responsibility here.
Yeah, I mean, the consequences are huge because, as my brother says, yes, our parents will get out of the graveyard and wring our necks if we mess this up.
What's your response to the capitalist who would say, why are you limiting your growth?
That is the techno-economic question. But I start with a different question. What are we optimizing for? We are optimizing for place. We're optimizing for community.
The pillars of this community have been won over. If Cobb's experiment helps diversify the economy, Glenn Best says he's all in.
It's not like we're overrun by tourism. That's not the way it works here. We're not, we're not the Venice of Newfoundland, We're not out of patience with people yet.
On our last night at the shed party, we got the full sweep of Fogo Island, its hospitality and its contrasts laid out on the table. Cod and crab, young and old, warmth, wit, and this,
Don't tell.
A traditional song delivered with a handshake, a kind of hope that comes tempered by history.
The undoing of this traditional way of making a life was very painful. I think I still carry those broken hearts. I think that kind of pain doesn't go away.
To what extent has that been repaired by the work you've done since you've come back?
Yeah, I think it actually does help. You can heal a broken heart.
Be satisfied with what you've got. Leave well enough alone.
"60 Minutes is constantly on the lookout for places we've never been before. So when our late colleague Bob Simon heard about a magical place in the Hebrides Islands off the coast of Scotland, known for making some of the great whiskies in the world, well, the story spoke to him. The place is called Islay, and it's one of 5 whiskey-producing regions in Scotland that make an expensive type of scotch called single-malt. Islay's distilleries turn out relatively small amounts of their own handcrafted brands for a worldwide luxury market that's more than doubled in size in the last decade and become the spirit equivalent of the fine wine business. Bob liked good scotch and beautiful places, so he went off to Scotland. He died before he could finish the piece, leaving behind a stack of videotapes and some random notes. We decided to finish it for him and raise a glass in his memory. Islay is a small island 20 miles off the west coast of Scotland. There are few trees, miles of windswept heather, and some of the most fertile agricultural land in Scotland. There are sheep and cattle everywhere and an abundance of wildlife. But that's not why people come here. This is 8 small distilleries that produce some of the world's finest single malt whiskies.
This is the whole lifeblood of this island and everybody on it. This is all we know.
Jim McEwen has been working at Islay's distillery since he was 15 years old. He's now master of the works at Bruichladdich.
I just thank God that he chose the Scots and gave them whiskey, because we appreciate the gift and we look after it.
They've been making it here since the 15th century, when supposedly some monks taught the locals how to use barley, water, and yeast to make a spirit the Scots now call the water of life. They've been perfecting it for 600 years. The distilleries are easy to find, but hard to pronounce. Ardbeg, Bamore, Bruichladdich, Bunnahabhain, Colilla, Kilchoman, Lagavulin, and Lefroy. As Bob Simon noted, they get harder to pronounce the more you visit.
For us guys on the west coast of Scotland, whiskey is a religion because it's a provider. And the great thing about whiskey is not just a drink, it's much more than that. Have you ever watched some old Hollywood movies?
Yes, I have.
Scotch was always portrayed in Hollywood as a whiskey when you were down or you were in trouble. The one thing that was going to get you back on your feet and out there was a Scotch.
Today, if you're down on your luck, you probably can't afford an Islay single malt. The good ones start at around $70 a bottle. The rare ones can go for hundreds of dollars a glass at chic whiskey bars around the world, where they're known for their distinctive smoky taste. It comes from peat, the mossy earthen fuel that's cut from bogs on the island. It was used to heat Scottish homes for centuries and is still used to toast the barley at Islay distilleries. John Campbell is the master distiller at Lefroy, one of the top-selling single malts in America.
Peat is the thing that makes Islay unique, and it really resonates with people, and it just engenders a kind of love-hate relationship, and the people that love it absolutely love it with a passion.
And there seems to be no shortage of them. Islay is not easy to get to, usually requiring multiple flights, a long drive, and a 2-hour ferry ride. Yet enthusiasts continue to make the pilgrimage, especially for the Whiskey Festival.
We get literally thousands upon thousands of single malt tourists coming here. They come from all over the world just to set foot on Islay.
To study it?
No, to drink it. It's lovely. It's clean, it's fresh, it's vibrant.
Officially, Whiskey Fest is a celebration of Islay's culture, but mostly it's about drinking.
Absolutely beautiful. No off notes at all.
As they listen to Jim McEwen extol the virtues of Bruichladdich, the novitiates, connoisseurs, and whiskey snobs approached each glass with reverence bordering on the religious.
Oh, wow. The fruit in that is incredible.
As the glasses empty, the smiles got bigger. But the Islanders will tell you that all of this warmth and good feeling comes not from the alcohol and the spirits, but from the spirit of the place. It is almost mystical, beautiful, dramatic, and quiet. There's no road rage, barely any traffic. If you do get hung up, it's probably because of a farm animal. They have the right of way. And if you do happen upon people, they'll almost always greet you with the Islay wave.
So everybody just waves because it's just friendly. There's not so many of us, so you just wave to say hi.
It's what Ailsa Hayes liked about the island when she moved her family here from London to take a manager's position at one of Islay's thriving distilleries.
It's strange, is it not, that such a small place with so few people, your products are known everywhere in the world.
I know, it makes us all very proud, it does. There's such a boom worldwide for single malts. It's fantastic, and you can really feel that on the island. A lot of the distilleries have doubled production, and so there's a lot of opportunities there as well.
And there's no reason to believe that that won't continue.
Well, times are good, people drink. Times are bad, people drink.
Is it possible to be socially acceptable to be a teetotaler on this island?
Yes.
Are there any?
Yes. No, I'm not one of them.
Over the years, the island's people have learned how to entertain themselves, often at gatherings called ceilidhs, which feature traditional dance and sad songs, mostly about leaving Islay and yearning to return.
To sit with my love on the bridge above the rippling waterfall, to go back home, never more to roam, is my dearest wish of all.
If this looks and feels a lot like Ireland, that's no coincidence. It's only 25 miles away. They come from the same tribe, share the same Celtic culture and Gaelic language, not to mention a love of good whiskey that gets them through stormy weather and the long winter nights. There are no movie theaters on Islay, no dry cleaners, no supermarkets, no McDonald's, at least in the fast food business. Jim McEwen says there's a long list of things that Islay doesn't have and doesn't want.
We don't have any crime. We don't have mugging, carjacking, housebreaking, rape, just dope, drugs. We don't have that. You can keep that. You're very welcome to it.
How do you explain the fact that there's no crime here? There's crime everywhere else.
If you commit a crime in a small community, you will be ostracized and have to leave. Not only that, your family, your children and your children's children will be remembered as the children of the man who committed the crime.
Most Scots are forthright, practical people who are proud of their country and the fact that their most famous export has withstood the test of time. They see themselves as artisans, and making whiskey is more about art and alchemy than manufacturing. Every distiller has their own secrets and superstitions. We'll give you the unclassified 2-minute tour. Sorry, we can't offer you free samples. It begins with a bit of trickery on the malting floor, when barley that's been soaked in water is spread out and raked over and over to convince the grain it's spring and time to germinate, releasing the starches that are locked inside. It's then dried with peat smoke to add flavor and ground into flour, sometimes with 19th century machinery, and then mixed with hot water, transforming the starches into a sugary concoction called mash.
Smell that, Bob?
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that, you can smell the goodness.
Yeast is then added, changing the sugar into alcohol, a primitive ale, which is then cooked a couple of times in copper stills, where the vapor is collected and condensed into this clear liquid.
And that's the stuff we want to go into the barrel.
But what I'm looking at is this looks like rubbing alcohol. This is, in fact, the whiskey.
It's very good. If you need a rub, there's no doubt about it.
I bet it would be good. But once it goes into the barrel, from then it's just time.
It's just time. And it's a great journey, you know. This is a child, but the cask is the mother. And that's what makes the journey. If you give a good cask, you're bound to get a good child. It's that simple.
It takes less than 3 weeks to make, but requires at least 10 years of aging in these oak casks, which add flavor and color to turn it into world-class single malt whiskey.
You'll see some of the names. There's Claremont Springs, Buffalo Trace, Jim Beam.
Bob was surprised to learn that 97% of the casks used to make single malt whiskey had been previously used to age American bourbon and bought secondhand from U.S. distillers. It's testimony to the ingenuity and frugality of the Scots, who have very few oak trees.
Without the American barrel, there would be no whiskey industry. It's as simple as that.
A sophisticated palate will detect a hint of the oak and bourbon in Isla's single malt, as well as the sweetness of sherry that comes from wine casks bought in Europe. Before the final product is sold, it will have done time in a number of different casks. Master distiller Jim McEwen is the one who decides when to rotate them and when each barrel is ready to be bottled. He opened a young cask for Bob to sample.
I would describe that as mellow yellow, absolutely pure.
And it's only 7 years old.
That's right. Young whiskies are like young people. They're vibrant, they're full of life. In fact, this for me is like coming home from work. At the end of the day, I work really hard. Nobody appreciates me. My wife doesn't appreciate me. My kids don't appreciate me. Life's a bitch.
Couple of glasses of that and it doesn't matter.
A couple of shots of that and I am the king of the world.
Absolutely. You know, frankly, I never liked this stuff, but the way you're talking me into it.
But you got to check every barrel.
I certainly hope so. Cheers.
McEwen is the man responsible for the taste and consistency of the whiskeys at Bruichladdich, which requires a very personal involvement with the product.
I have heard you described as the cask whisperer.
I do talk to casks, there's no doubt about it.
In what language?
Mainly English, and it depends how many whiskies I've had. If I'd had a few whiskies, I tend to revert to the Gaelic language, so I'm talking to the cask. It's just one of these things, you go into the warehouse and you pop the bung out, and you draw your sample, yeah, and you look at it and you think, wow, you're beautiful. But you're not just ready yet. Tell you what, I'm going to come back and see you in 3 months, okay? And other times you find a cask which is so incredibly good, you can't not speak. You say, oh my God, you are the most beautiful thing I have ever tasted in my life. You know, and you think, oh jeez, I just want to share this with somebody. But there's nobody around, there's just me and the cask.
We'll stay.
On most days, McEwen devotes several hours to quality control, checking up on several hundred casks.
But it's a fantastic job, nosing and tasting whiskies.
And you can still walk out of here in the evening?
Occasionally I need some help, there's no doubt about that, yeah.
Dying devotion to one's whiskey is apparently not all that unusual. While we were on Islay, the camera crew ran into a party of Canadians, the friends and family of a deceased single malt lover named Bill, who wanted his ashes scattered in the waters opposite his favorite distillery. Funds for the pilgrimage were set aside in his will.
That's what I wanted. It's good, it's good. To Bill.
Bill, Angela.
Now he's happy. Now he's happy.
After that, the only thing left was for Bob to say goodbye to Jim McEwen, and it turned out to be last call for our old pal, Bob Simon.
Cheers, Bob. Hope you've enjoyed this little visit here.
You're speaking in the past, it's not over.
Yeah, I'm going to get you out of here, man. This is you're costing me a fortune.